we have with us Amit Ronen, who is the director of the GW Solar Institute. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
And I think you'll be able to see your stuff here because you cannot see the screen. So.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bob, for the introduction and invitation to be here. So I head up the GW Solar Institute. We're part of Kathleen's Sustainability Collaborative, and what we focus on is the public policy barriers to solar energy deployment. We think about, identify those problems, then we try and think of pragmatic and politically attuned solutions, and then go and talk to decision makers here in town about them. So I'm going to spend about just a minute talking on some of our current focus areas in case folks are interested in what we're working on and want to collaborate with us, or obviously everything is on our website, and then the main topic of the day. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay, so one of the things we've been doing a lot of work on is low-income solar. So a lot of people know that solar is booming, but it's happening primarily in affluent neighborhoods. So the questions we've been asking is how do you get that to lower-income Americans who are primarily renters, more likely to be renters, more likely to live in multifamily buildings, don't have that upfront capital to pay for a solar system themselves if they do have their own roofs, or don't have the credit scores to get a lease. And a lot of times federal government plays billions of dollars in people's low-income Americans' electricity bills. So you can make the link there, well, wouldn't it be a better investment to pay solar rather than this year after year expense, and that would be better for the environment and for taxpayers and what have you. Another thing we do is the National Solar Job Census in partnership with the Solar Foundation. So last year we showed that solar jobs grew at 20 times the rate of the U.S. economy. 1 in 78 jobs created in the United States was in the solar industry last year. And another thing we are doing a lot of work on is the investment tax credit, which is one of the primary federal drivers for the growth we've seen in solar. It's a 30% tax credit. A lot of you know it expires next year. So we've been doing a lot of analysis and modeling and talking to people up on the Hill about what kind of regime could come after the ITC expires. We modeled what happens to the industry if it expires, if it's extended. We put together a ramp down scenario that there's a lot of interest on the Hill about, technology neutral credit, what MLPs, which a lot of people also have been interested in, and what would that look like if it was replaced the ITC. So those are kind of the stuff we're working on. But what our main thing I was asked to talk about today was the Capital Partners Solar Project. And what is the Capital Partners Solar Project? It's essentially a very big PPA that it took a couple years to develop, but was signed last June, a partnership between George Washington University, American University, George Washington University Hospital, and Duke Energy Renewables. I guess Bill's around here. He's in a different division, but with a partner company. And I'll tell you a little bit about the specifics, but just some of the numbers first. It's a big project. It's almost 250,000 solar panels that are together going to provide the equivalent of 50% of the university's load. And when you look at that over 20 years, it's a lot of power. And this is over 20 years. If you took that as a sort of an annual basis, the amount of power produced that's through this project is about 1% of the load of the entire District of Columbia. So I think it's a good model to some of the stuff that we're talking about today of how an end user, a big energy end user, can use the market and financing to drive clean energy. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about how that happened. First, the buyers. As I mentioned, there's 3 primary institutions, and also Customer First Renewables. They were the expert that helped talk between the institutions, which can be a challenge when you have big bureaucracies and that are not used to these kind of products or in this marketplace. But the key point about the buyers is that combined we had the market share and the buying power to be able to go to the market and drive a solution where we took advantage of that as big organizations and big power users. So why would we do it? The main reason and the driver, don't worry about the chart being small, but it's essentially this university and American University were said, hey, how can we best meet our climate goals? We had fairly aggressive sustainability goals that came out a couple of years ago. For our university, it's 40% by 2025, 80% by 2040, and there was also a a priority not to necessarily get that just from offsets or from buying RECs on the open market, but trying to drive a market solution ourselves. For American University, they actually are going 100%, but they are more amenable to using offsets and unbundled RECs. So that was the goal there. And there was also price uncertainty. So this is a chart. Again, don't worry about the numbers, but you can see that a lot of bounce in that line, and that just means electricity prices are going up and down over the years. That's difficult for any institution, but particularly for us being a very big energy user, we're looking for ways to mitigate that risk over time. And it turned out one of the big bonuses in all this, and I think an important storyline about where we are in terms of clean energy and the possibilities out there, is that we ended up a 20-year fixed contract, and the electricity price is less than what we would pay at market, and that price is locked in over time. So as electricity prices go up, which they probably will, we'll be in an increasingly better position. All right, so in terms of where we started and what we were looking at, and why this model worked for us and might be replicable in other spaces. So obviously we're in a dense urban environment. This is a bird's eye view of our campus. Not a lot of green space. There is some green space out there, but DC people probably recognize that's the mall, and probably can't build solar panels there for us. We have a pretty big energy load. Again, that speaks to the ability to say, hey, this is a big market that we can offer. And importantly for how we structured this is that we are in PJM. It's a deregulated market, so that allows this kind of options in terms of electricity that's there, but also going back to the environmental side, it was important to us that any project was within the PJM grid, so we could legitimately say that this project is being built, even though the electrons are probably not coming directly to us, because there's no direct transmission line, and I'll explain how the project works in a minute. We are displacing dirtier fuel on dirtier emission sources, dirtier electricity mix somewhere else on PJM. And if you look at PJM's grid, it's actually a very small percentage is renewables right now. There's a lot of fossil, significant number of nuclear. But the interesting thing here, so while it's a teeny fraction, this is as the end of 2013, a little bit. Numbers are a little bit better now, but not that much better. But I think the interesting thing, which you can see here on the next slide, is that, so we issued the RFP, we got 28 responses. The majority were wind, but actually solar came in as the more competitive offers in the end. But the other pie, which I wanted to show you, this is the combined capacity of the responders. And I think the interesting thing there is we got offered 1.6 gigawatts worth of projects. So it speaks to, even though there's not much potential or use right now in PJM, which is not as blessed with renewable resources as, say, Southwest, obviously, for solar, or the Midwest for wind. Even in our region in the Mid-Atlantic, there's a lot of potential out there if you go out and start asking for it. And so here's the final slide. We got 3 big solar farms are being built in North Carolina for us. It's actually the east corner of North Carolina is in PJM. A lot of people don't realize that, but we qualify for that. The first project has been built. There'll be 52 megawatts over the 3 farms combined. And so this year we'll have about a quarter of our load from solar power equivalents, and in future years it will be 50%. And that's what I got for you today. Thank you.